This is SimNews.TV, and you're listening to the Superleague Show. And it's the first of 2018. How long has it been since we've done this? Hello, everybody listening. I'm Jake Sanson. It is a pleasure to be back for the 2018 GPVWC Superleague season. And boy, oh boy, have we got a lot to get through. First of all, a roundup of the 2017 season, all the latest news, a few of the confirmed and signed drivers, teams, and calendar changes. So we've got so much to get through. In order to do that, we need some panelists. And who else but Ben Willis, Kacper Ben, and Mike Pittman. Hello, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Hello.
Hello.
Have you worked off that turkey and stuffing yet? Has it gone down? No, me neither. No, me neither. Fair enough. Anyway, let's talk about something we can speak about with authority, which is GPVWC Super League. Now, obviously, we need to talk about the season that was Rudy Van Buren's. It was the year in which we like to think he trained himself perfectly for his World Fastest Gamer title, using an amazing combination of good strategy, good discipline, and great racecraft. Kacper, you have summed up the season in 3 words. In the official summary I've got in front of me here. I say official very loosely. Tyres were horrid, which is, I think, a universally held opinion from everybody who had anything to do with the Super League in 2017.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes that I put it in all caps as well.
Too right.
No, I have had the questionable pleasure of doing the young drivers test on these tires, and it's just, I think everybody, as I talked to them after the season and during the season as well, and when I tested them, they were just horrible. You just felt like literal chewing gum for tires would do better.
So, is that going to be sorted then for 2018?
As far as I know, it is.
Yes.
It's just Tire's going to have a completely different model, but I think Ben knows more about that.
From what I've seen from a little bit of work in the mod testing group, we have got a better set of tyres for next year that will hopefully last a bit longer, and we won't have a ridiculous number of pit stops. So hopefully that will have a better effect on the show.
Fantastic. I mean, I won't deny that the pit stops certainly spiced up the camera work. But I think it would be nice to have most of the racing done on track this season. That would be nice.
It's much easier as a manager, strategy-wise.
Well, absolutely, Mike. I mean, you've had some really difficult moments on the pit wall this year, and it hasn't always been perfect.
Well, no, geez. But having said that, everyone was working with the same tyres. It was just who could do best with them, really. And I think that's what worked out with us. But yeah, it came up with some interesting strategies that some people have tried across the season as well. When you're getting into double figures, that's something that I don't think anyone had ever planned pre-season. So yeah, it made it very interesting for the viewer as well, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, well, the 2017 season was all about the Dutchman Rudy Van Buren and making his way to the title with 12 wins and 15 podiums in total out of just 17 starts, which is pretty astonishing. It was all about him through the 2017 season. But Risto Capit, David Fidek, Florian Gaia, Gergo Baldi, and Alex Cooper all topped the winners' podium through the course of the season, with challenges in the early part of the season from Lee Morris. Jarl Tyant, Fran Lopez, and Thomas Hinds made their way into the top 10 in the points, with the likes of David Francic and Bart de Vos sniffing for the scraps at the end of the season. We saw some fantastic debuts, we saw some brilliant consistency, and we saw 12 incredible teams going at it through the 2017 season. It's all change as we hit the reset button for 2018, so let's tell you what is happening. First of all, some new teams are coming in. From the world of Super Cup, we welcome Measuric, Evolution, and Epic. All of them have stepped up from the lower tier. And Ben, this is a very positive move to see these guys having done so well in the 2017 Super Cup season. But Super League is going to be a very different challenge.
Exactly. It's the one thing I really like about the career ladder is you get to see that progression of a team start out from maybe 1 or 2 OK drivers and one person in charge, all the way straight up into Super League where they could be a big force. Measuric, Evolution, and Epic all deserve to go up. They had really good campaigns in Super Cup last year. And Super League is a different challenge. There's a lot more for the manager to do, a lot of things they've got to worry about in terms of upgrades, in terms of staff. But this is certainly a challenge they can take head on, really. So, good luck for 2018 to them.
And there are 2 other teams that are making their way into the championship in 2018. Eval, the Estonian outfit that has been part of GPVWC on and off for the last 5 years or so and have been champions in various categories. They will have an interesting step up. And the Dutch team, Flag to Flag Racing. It's going to be interesting to see how they will get on. based as they are in Surrey in England. It'll be an interesting challenge for them as newbies to the championship. We'll see how that continues on. However, at the top, it is Brawn into Mercedes time. We've hit the retro button because Vodball Racing are no more. They have been rebranded, and I think we should come to Mike Pittman about this because your team as Vodball has now been completely rebranded. It is now known as Avid Chronic Racing. Wait for it, Zach Speed. Hello, this is going to be an interesting one for 2018.
Yeah, I'm excited by the season commencing. Can't wait to actually get the cars on track and show you all what we're going to do. If you think we were big under Vodball Racing, wait till you see what we do under Zach Speed's name. I've got pressure now.
And let's just clarify, this is genuinely the Zach Speed, as in the ex-Formula One team Bernd Schneider raced for and the current GT Masters racers. This is the team.
Yep, absolutely. We're their official esports team exclusively for the next 3 years. It's potentially a longer term deal as well, but that's where we're heading. We're on board. They're excited by what sim racing is doing. They see that as quite a lot of motorsport teams are now starting to see that there's a definite use to having sim racers and what we can do. And I think GPVWC is top of for me at the moment. rfactor 2, it's the top single seater series. It's great to be able to be working with them, to speak to the engineers. Our owner's been around the factory, and it's been a long haul to get done, but there's huge amounts of stuff going forwards, and the blend between ourselves in the sim racing environment and the real world, particularly with the GT Masters in 2018, will be interesting as well.
That's pretty cool, and it's not the only proper F1 connection that will be in the Super League paddock in
2018
because Stormfighter Racing Systems have got themselves Street Fighter. That's how long it's been. That's how long it's been since we've been away. I'm already confusing things. My apologies. It is Street Fighter. Apologies to Street Fighter, who have a new title sponsor. And again, it comes fresh from the world of Formula One. Red Bull. I kid you not. Kacper, how? Question mark, how?
I mean, that's more to decide by the management, to be said by the management itself. But it is incredible to see those big names actually showing up in the world of sim racing. And I have tested for Street Fighter. They're right in the young drivers test. So technically, I can say in a very weird way that I have tested for Red Bull now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very weird way.
We should say that this is the Australian arm of Red Bull, who, as we know from supercars, do things very, very cool. Very cool indeed. So I'm sure that everybody at Red Bull Street Fighter are going to produce an amazing looking car. It's probably going to be their best looking livery ever in Super League. We cannot wait for that to drop the web. That's going to be amazing. What else should we talk about? There's new race circuits for this year. Well, I say new, returning is what I should say. In the shape of Paul Ricard, we're getting the French Grand Prix back at the same time as Formula One, which is awesome. Sorry, Mexico, you're going to have to wait for another year. It was a great race. We loved it. But because of the rotational system in GPVWC, we'll put you on the back burner and come back to you at a later date. But thank you to the Mexico City circuit. Paul Ricard is going to join us in 2018. The Sochi circuit in Russia is disappearing to be replaced by the streets of Baku in Azerbaijan. That'll be an interesting one for Super League drivers. Let me tell you, that's going to be fun. And the German Grand Prix is switching as well from the Nürburgring to the Hockenheim Ring. All very positive changes there, Mike. I think that should be a good one.
Yeah, as you say, quite interested by Baku. That's quite
early. Hesitation.
Why is it everybody is against?
Well, it's quite early in the calendar as well. It's only round 3.
It is, to be fair.
So people won't be quite used to the cars and the tyres yet, and we'll only just be getting a few upgrades on and all that sort of thing.
I'm rubbing my hands with glee.
Potentially some new drivers on the grid and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that could be an interesting one. I've just got to hope we're at the front and run away rather than being in the pack. I do not want to be in the middle of that pack.
Surely that very, very tight chicane in the middle of the circuit, which if you're not careful will end you down a one-way street, could be quite tricky.
It could be is definitely an understatement. Yeah. Yeah,
I've driven that in simulations on rfactor 2, and I have to say, I still don't think it should be an F1 circuit. Never mind a Super League circuit.
Having said that, Monaco was very clean this year, so maybe we're doing a disservice to the level of Super League drivers.
To be fair, I was incredibly impressed with how clean Monaco was at the start. I mean, in Formula Challenge and Super Cup, we had to red flag it on both occasions. With Super League, we didn't. So I was actually very impressed with the way it worked out at Monaco. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, new engines for this year. Quasar are coming in to supply the Wouters team. Now, this is going to be interesting, Ben. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work out for them.
Yeah, I mean, very little is known about this actually because it was only announced yesterday, and I know Andreas Wouters, who's in charge of Wouters Automotive, is not actually in his home country at the moment. He's away on business in China, I think. So,
right,
very little has actually gone out about this. But this is, of course, the engine tender to replace Trinity, who were with the formerly Superleague team Woods from last year. So it is, of course, a manufacturer deal for Wouters. They get control of how the Quasar engine is developed and what way they want to take it. And of course, they're able to supply other teams as well. So it'll be very interesting to see who opts to go with what is an unproven package for 2018. We know nothing about Quasar. We don't know where they want to go with the engine. We don't know how much experience Andreas has in terms of building engines. But equally, it's quite a logical step to take if you want to go for the title. To have control of, the route of development in your engine is really crucial. And it sort of supports my idea from last year of thinking that Wouters are going to make that push for the title this season. So really interesting to see how that one turns out.
Could be an interesting challenge for them. And of course, the much hotly anticipated new spec of GPVWC Superleague car. The early images have been released, and my gosh, it makes the Formula One car look tame. It's absolutely appalling, the difference compared to last year's car and this year's car. It's a completely different ball game. It looks absolutely astonishing. I love the look of it. It genuinely looks like it could be a world beater, Kacper. We could potentially see some lap records absolutely shatter during the season.
Absolutely, it looks amazing. Last year's car nearly reminded me of just an elongated Formula Challenge car in a way for some reason, while this looks properly racy. And yeah, I think we're going to have to see, because obviously looks don't necessarily mean speed in sim racing. It's all down to the physics of the car. But I do think that this could be an exciting prospect, and if the tires are as much better as Ben said, this going fast, and this actually these cars racing around on a grid of over 20 cars, this will be a season to be watched.
So obviously it's going to look better than the Formula One car for this year. Oh, I can't believe I said. So it's going to be the way it currently is, and the cars will look spectacular. So who's going to be on the starting grid? Well, let's talk about how things were last year and how they'll tally up to this year. Now, we compared the teams halfway through the season. Those of you who listened in religiously last year to the Superleague show will know that we cast our votes on how the teams had done at the halfway point. So let's see if that has changed any. Vodball Racing, obviously, mid-season, they were leading. They had that little blip in the second half of the season. Mike, you obviously went into a lot of details about how things progressed from you, and you guys did emerge in the end of the year as the championship. We're not going to touch too much on Upgrade Gate. We've said everything that has been said about it already. It's not really a major problem in terms of how the championship eventually played out. They still emerged as champions. It was an interesting situation, but Vodball emerged as champions. They're going to be rebranded for this year. Our mid-season show score for them, can anyone remember what we gave them in the end? I think it was a 9 out of 10, wasn't it? Or something like that. It was certainly...
I'd be surprising if it wasn't a 9 or a 10, given the start of the season.
Well, Mike, I'm sorry, you're biased, so you can't vote in this one.
Oh.
Sorry. No, sorry. This is the last time I'm not going to give you a bias. Ben Willis, what would you say in terms of how the team has done?
I would have gone for 10 if we not had Upgrade Gate, so 9.
Fair enough. Casper? Same again?
I think I'm going to be the same, yeah. 9 would have been 10 without the gate.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that one, and especially considering how Risto Capit came on in the second half. He was really, really strong, and he managed to get that second place in the Drivers' Championship. Absolutely spot on. Perfect work from him.
So 10 out of 10 for the drivers, and me take it down to 9.
Yes, pretty much.
Fair, understandable, agree.
At least it won't happen again in 2018. at least that won't be a problem.
Or will it? No, anyway.
Whoa!
Now you've said it. Now you've said it. I was backing you up there, buddy. Anyway, on to Nordstjen Racing, who were the runners-up in the 2017 season. Halfway through the season, I think we gave them an 8, if I remember rightly, an 8 out of 10. They were pretty good in terms of their effort. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 8.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
What do we think about them in 2017 now that this season has ended, Kacper? What grade would you give them?
To be honest, they have really they did actually come on in the second half. They weren't as good as Vodbull in terms of drivers, but they were still very, very quick. So honestly, because they didn't have the gate, I'd say they're also a 9 for me, but they would have been lower than Vodbull in terms of their drivers.
Okay, a 9 for you. Mike, from your point of view.
Well, right, from my point of view, I suppose. Actually,
Still biased.
Well, yeah, I'm still biased. But you look at it across the course of the season, actually, and arguably, I'd say they actually got caught by Walters quite heavily. But then, right at the end of the season, they seemed to find something as well. You know, I couldn't sit there and go they were as good as Red Bull because they weren't. But so I give them an 8. But they were, you know, near enough there.
It's wonderful just listening to you with the shovel in your hand. Away at your
I'll take 2 shovels, please.
It's marvellous. Ben Willis, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm leaning towards an 8. I think towards the end of the season, Guy was actually the better of the pair between Guy and Fiduk. It was a few times where Fiduk could have done a lot better than he did. Austin, for an example. But yeah, 8 I think is probably right. They didn't really show a candle to VB towards the end of the season. So.
Okay, well, I would agree with you on that one. An 8 out of 10 is pretty fair. We haven't heard what the driving lineup is going to be from ACR Zakspeed yet, but we do know the driver lineup for Nordstjen in 2018. And get this, guys, David Fiduk remains in the team, which is absolutely fine and dandy. He'll have a countryman as his teammate. Alex Cooper is moving into the team. Now that is a recipe for sensationalism. I think that's going to be a really, really good fight between those two. David Fiduk, Alex Cooper, both very hungry, very, very determined racers. I can see them really pushing for the title. I think that will be a really good season from their point of view. Looking forward to that.
I have to say, it did surprise both myself and Mike when we first heard this, because I think it's quite well known that David Fiduk and Alex Cooper have had their troubles at times in the past.
They have.
You know, there's always been a little bit of friction there. So
is it a bit like putting Hamilton and Alonso back together?
Maybe. If it gets results, I don't think Nordstjen are going to care too much.
No, I suppose not. So, not quite the same internal workings as Formula One, but
well,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Wouters Automotive then. Let's talk about the Wouters team. In 3rd position in the season. Mid-year, they were only 5th. Then we had the Mad Cape scenario. So they did manage to bring themselves back into the mix. We gave them 7 out of 10 at the time, halfway through the year. If Jarl Tyen had been there from day one, Kacper, is it fair to say that they could have been the runners-up in the championship?
There is definitely a chance of that, because Jarl Tyen has shown some incredible speed throughout the second half of the season once he did turn on. But yeah, I do think that if he was there all the time, yes, I think they could have challenged for that second place, all right. And yeah, no, they basically turned out an amazing speed out of that car.
I disagree on that. I think Nordstjen had the better of them, even though Jarl did very well. Most of it was down to strategy rather than just outright speed, and I think Gaia and Fiduk were quicker.
So it was their tactical thinking that got them the points gain that they made.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot to be said. Of course, there's lots of ifs and buts. If Tyne had been there the whole season, if he wasn't racing other series, Boldy as well, racing other series and stuff, that the time element to it compared to the 2 Nordstjen guys that just did GPV plays a big factor. So I think that would probably have seen them in the end come out. So it would have been closer than it was. Sorry, but
that's a good point.
I do think that, to be honest, Mike, one thing is if Jarl was there from the beginning, he would have been used to the car more than he was throughout the just being there for the second half of the season.
That's true.
Being used to that car and kind of getting the time in was seemingly crucial to actually get the most out of it.
Yeah, and you have to say...
He did 11 races.
He did 11 races, but you have to say, considering he joined mid-season with no knowledge of what the car was going to be like, no knowledge of what the tyres were going to be like, he held himself up admirably. I would say Jarl is one of the most impressive drivers of the season, pound for pound, when you consider that he didn't have the prep coming in. He just had to jump in straight away and be competitive. And most of the time he was.
Well,
I don't know. I'm just going to let that
agree to
settle.
disagree a little bit, shall we? But I think
It's a controversial opinion. That's what I'm here for.
He was very good and impressed massively, definitely. But I don't know whether that was just because did he impress better than the team was doing at the start of the season.
So from Mike's point of view, the team was better than the drivers, which is the reverse almost of Nordian to a certain extent. Or is that quite right?
This is getting complex now.
I'll pass you that shovel. Anyway, let's talk about the 10 out of 10 for Wouters. Do they get 10? Ben, from your point of view, how many do they get?
Somewhere between 7 and 8, I'd say. I think there's some strong races.
Are we about to go into decimal places?
I can bring a 7.5 to the table if you want.
7.5.
Yeah, let's go 7.5.
Kacper, what do you think?
No, I think that's very fair. That's what I was also looking at, about 7 or 8. It is fair.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I'd have scored towards the 7 rather than the 8, but yes, I'll happily settle on a 7.5.
You're just still digging yourself a hole now, aren't you?
No, because you're looking at the whole season across it. Yeah, they did a good end, but the start of the season wasn't great. Boldy got a win, granted, in the wet, but other than that, it wasn't a great start to the season. That's what cost them.
Note to self: winning isn't good enough. 7.5. 7.5.
You'll learn that if you join ZaxB.
We should settle this with a 7.5. 7.5 makes sense. We'll go for that, and that's the first time a motor racing top 10 has ever gone into decimal places that I can think of. Into Adonis Engineering. Oh no, wait! It's the second time because mid-season we gave Adonis 4.5. There you go.
Hey!
It has already happened. They were 9th position in the mid-season, which is why they were so far. However, their transformation, they might as well have just taken all of their inner workings, drivers, cars, internal strategy, everything, put it through a tornado and come out the other side, because the change in the second half of the year was astonishing. They were absolutely brilliant. Their first half of the year was appalling. They had such a bad consistency level. However, once they got their heads in gear, Ben, it was a much, much different team compared to what we'd seen before.
Exactly, yeah. They had some really good, strong points finishes towards the end. Alex Siebel's third place at Singapore comes to mind, which is just crazy. The problem is it came at a cost of having loads of drivers on the books. They were rotating lineup pretty much every race, which is quite costly for a Super League team. Doesn't necessarily give a good image to the management at GPV. If you're changing lineup every 5 seconds and not having that consistency, and I think that costs them a little bit. Maybe if they had a more consistent lineup, they could have been challenging a bit more for third, but we don't know. Hopefully they can sort it out for next season and be in a lot stronger place.
So what is the key factor, Kacper, do you think, that really turned Adonis around? Was it Fran Lopez getting the hang of things a little bit, or, well, what was it? What really made the difference?
It's tough, really, isn't it? I think one of the things is we have seen some shows of brilliance from Fran later on in the season, but then it was still up and down. He has shown ups, and then just the next race we would never see him on the track really anywhere outside of just being out running in the bottom of the top 10 or even outside of it. But then whenever we've seen somebody like Alex Siebel come in, we've seen some amazing performances from him. And that's definitely one of the reasons that this team actually was able to go up in the standings, just because of those few amazing performances we've seen from different drivers across the final bit of the season, especially from Alex Siebel and Fran Lopez.
So let's talk about it from the point of view of how they turned it around. We gave them 4.5 in the season. Mike, end of season, what would you give them in terms of a top 10 out of 10?
They've probably gone up to a 6 now in my eyes. You can see a definite difference from the halfway point when we had a 3 or 4 week break in the middle, just before Germany sort of time, and they came back much stronger. Double points finishes from there on. The guys they called up, top guys that. Yes, they had a massive, roundabout of guys coming in and out of the car, but actually they all scored points. They weren't like just digging anybody up. So, I'd give them a 6. It needs a bit more work management wise. I think that's obviously something didn't go right at the start of the season from a setup or something along those lines just wasn't keyed in. Or maybe it's the development of the car. The actual car development might have gone the wrong direction to start with, and then they bolted the right parts in the car, and that's what sort of pulled them back at the grid again. Because they had by the end of the season, the car was the best. Well, that and Kerno were the best on the grid.
So a 6 out of 10 from you.
Yes.
Sounds reasonable. Kacper, what do you think? Out of 10.
I was going to say exactly that as well. 6. Compared to the mid-season, they have improved a whole lot. So a 6 out of 10 is very reasonable for what they have achieved.
Ben, any higher, any lower?
Equally, a 6 sounds like a reasonable score for them. I don't think you could go really any higher with the lack of consistency or a few wayward management calls, really. So 6 out of 10.
Yeah, they did well considering, but they could have really sorted it out a bit earlier. 6 out of 10, I think, is fair. And 4th position, a very, very generous position in the Constructors' Championship, considering. So well done, guys. Very good effort. 5th position, Hawkeye. Now, this is an interesting one. They were 4th in the mid-season. They slumped a little bit, only a position. They were 5.5 mid-season, but you have to consider, were their eyes a little bit bigger than their stomachs in terms of bringing in Lucas Euler into the team? Because it turned out, on paper, that was going to be one of the best decisions Hawkeye could ever make, placing him alongside Alex Cooper. They dropped Tobias Olsen to bring in Lucas Euler, and he was mega at the start at Spa. Other than that, I didn't really see the Lucas Euler that his reputation was built up. Kacper, it was such a letdown in the end.
He was just not visible across any race. It was you would be surprised to even acknowledge his existence in the race, because he just didn't do anything special outside of that Spa race, and it's kind of sad. I guess you could say that he was maybe trying to get used to the car, but that's half a season of trying to get to a car in a very similar manner that Jarl Tyan would have, and somehow he still manages to basically not help his team go up in the standings, with the team actually going down by the end of the season. So I have a feeling like that was not the right call in the end, although it was a gamble and it just didn't pay off, I guess.
And it was do you know what it sort of invoked to me a little bit, Mike, of Michael Schumacher returning to Formula One with Mercedes. He just didn't look like the same driver when he came back. And that was very Lucas Euler returning into the GPVWC Superleague fold.
Well, yeah, looking at it now, we look at that and go, well, yeah, that's the case. But actually at the time, I think that was it was a good gamble to make, really, at the point. I think part of it is down to where the team was. His team teamed up with Cooper, and Cooper arguably didn't get used to the tyres all season. He'd say that himself. He was doing too many pit stops and stuff. So I don't know whether the base wasn't there for Euler to jump in on to already start working with, whereas Tyan may have had that from Boldy already potentially at Walters. So there's that sort of element. It doesn't necessarily help you, particularly when you're getting used to a whole new game. It's a shame, because I think it probably has tarnished his reputation slightly that he built up. This godlike image at GPV, having won nearly everything multiple times. So hopefully it hasn't too much, but yeah, I don't think he'll be back next year.
It's an interesting one. In light of that, we gave them 5.5 at the mid-season. Does it drop or does it increase? Ben, what's your thought?
It's a tough one, because part of me thinks, did Hawkeye actually test Lucas Euler in the car before they did the switch?
It's a good question.
Based on the results at the end of the season, I'm not so sure. And on average, there was no wins or podiums into the second half of the season. I only had one podium visit across the entire season, and that was Russia with Cooper.
Where he the win, yeah.
Exactly, where he inherited the win off Van Buren. So I keep it at 5.5. I don't think they've improved. I don't think they've done enough to go down in scoring. I think 5.5 is about right.
Okay, Kacper, what do you think?
Honestly, I think that it is a 5 or 5.5 at most to me. So I'd say I'm gonna go slightly lower than 5 for
5.
Hawkeye.
Okay, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I just said 5 as well. I quite like Paolini coming in. Was a very positive move for them, though. Doing 3 races, pulling him up, he scored very well.
That's true. Yeah, Dino Paolini did do a good job, and that should be noted.
And what I did find funny, though, is that Olsen, having left, did better at Storm than in the
Yeah, he
Hawkeye.
did. He actually did. That's a good point.
And arguably nearly as well as Euler, and probably
Yeah,
cost
absolutely.
probably cost a third of the amount for him or something like that.
That's very true. Yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, I think you kind of have to say it's a little bit of a slump for Hawkeye. It's a big gamble. It didn't work. Perhaps if there had been a little bit more preparation into the move, then they might have done better. I think you have to say they've slumped to a 5 rather than 5.5, from my point of view anyway. Now, we move on to Red Archer. Now, this is one of our favorite teams in the grid. We absolutely love Red Archer, and it's all about their effort. They are absolutely incredible. They are stalwarts. They keep fighting. They keep pushing. They were 6th mid-season. They ended 6th. We love talking about Red Archer because although they get through a massive quantity of drivers, Kacper, and they do, they always come back with positive attitudes, a massive fighting strategy. They always keep on trying.
I mean, we have seen Thomas Hinz do really well in Red Archer, if I recall correctly, this season, and that is, I mean, it's always one of those teams where you're watching their progress, and you just must have a smile on your face when you see them do well. And I think for them to keep the 6th place is not at the end of the season is actually not too bad at all. And while they aren't the championship contenders, and they weren't challenging for the wins this season as they were at the end of last season, I think that they still did quite reasonably well for, again, a team that goes through so many drivers. It nearly feels like a stepping stone for a lot of drivers to maybe try out in Red Archer, and it's kind of like a gate for them to get in here into Super League.
Yeah, they did do a great job, and to be fair, it's going to be all changing. We've heard that there's not going to be a Valiant engine deal for them. They're now going to be working with, let me remind myself, they've got a new engine supplier for this year. And that
I don't think we know yet, do we?
Oh, we don't know. No, we haven't heard which engine it's all up in the air. They've signed Pedro Gomez as a driver from Portugal, so that will be interesting to see how he gets on. Will Thomas Hinz join him? That's going to be another interesting question to answer. We'll have to wait and see on that one. We gave them 7 out of 10 at the time. Mike, has that changed?
I suppose it has to slightly. The drivers that sort of came in the second half of the season weren't quite to the level that we'd seen. Hinz came back and did very well, and Fournier jumped in again and did very well. But that just shows how good the car was, I suppose, and actually what people can do if they had a bit more time and effort in it. So yeah, they probably, if you looked at it and go, they finished, they can't be that high up on the scoring, can they really? You can't score them higher than Hawkeye.
Do you reckon 6?
Well,
because you get in the trouble here of going, well, we quite like them and they're punching above their weight. Well, why are they punching above their weight? They had the same car as everyone at the start of the season. They had the same opportunity to pick all the drivers that everyone else did. If you finish down as 6th and you go through quite a lot of drivers as well, they went through nearly as many as Adonis.
Are you a Keanu Reeves fan, by any chance? Because I swear Santa brought you Devil's Advocate for Christmas. He must have done.
I was going to say, because I'd argue it's all relative in that Hawkeye started off with, an arguably a stronger lineup than Red Archer, and then progressively got worse.
Isn't that Red Archer's fault?
Well, it depends. It depends
They
on the
signed the
entire
drivers.
driver market and the conditions.
I love this
Stuff
show. So many arguments, so little time. So you're saying a 6 then, Mike?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. Kacper, what do you think?
To be perfectly honest, I think 6 is a very reasonable score for Red Archer.
Okay.
Just not
6
quite as good in the second half of the season as the first. I think that's pretty much just the way it is. But yeah, I think 6 is a fair.
Okay. 6th in the championship, 6 out of 10 for 2 of our panelists. What about the third, Ben?
I'd lean towards 6.5. I don't think they've dropped off as much as people make out. I think
We're going to decimals again.
well, you got to, haven't you? But I think Jeffrey Fournier's performances when he did drive the car would, stand out. And I don't think it deserves dropping down to a 6.
Do you know what? I kind of agree with you there because Jeff Fournier did do an amazing job, having been in Super Cup and Formula Challenge from time to time over the course of the year.
What I'm hearing here is we're going to have to go down to 6.25 because we're
6.2. Yeah, well, 2 of us think
Serious.
6.5 because I'm going to go for 6.5. 2 of us think 6. I think it's going to have to be 6.25. That is officially the first time it's ever gone to 2 decimal places. That's impressive. Okay, right. Now this one, I don't see us having too much of an argument. Mad Cape Racing. At the midpoint in the season, they were 3rd, and we gave them a very low score. of 5.5 because this was at the point when things were starting to tumble out of control. They didn't get better, they got worse. And it was just like England against the West Indies. It just collapsed. Absolutely appalling. I mean, we'd have done a better job with England in the Ashes, to be perfectly honest. They plummeted from 3rd down to 7th in the Constructors' Championship. And it basically gave, it gave us an idea to the fact, Ben, that basically all of Mad Cape for 2017 was built around one guy. And in sim racing, particularly in GPVWC, that never works.
Exactly. As soon as Lee Morris started faltering and then got himself banned, it tumbled out of control to the point there was one race, I think, where they had nobody turn up. And they were so patchy on getting drivers to the race. The results just completely fell away. But it's this weird juxtaposition of at the start of the season, they went a really weird way on upgrades. And sort of not doing anything at all for the first 2 races, and we're still okay with Lee Morris. They were really up there, and then it all just fell away, and they dropped from 3rd down to 7th.
Yeah, it was.
Which is huge, absolutely huge in terms of prize money, in terms of stature as a team as well.
And let's be fair, they are quite lucky given the current climate of teams falling away and coming back. They are quite lucky to still be on the grid in 2018 in Super League. Let's not forget that. They are actually quite fortunate to still have a space on the grid.
I'd argue because it was their first year, I think they've been given a bit of a pass. I don't think you get that in the second year.
Yeah, I reckon so.
I think, everyone does make errors, and we saw that from them at the start of the season. But, they came in, they gambled, got a top driver in. It was always a gamble with that particular driver anyway, but it could have paid off. I think they need to look and reevaluate for next year and probably go much more solid base. Galkut, to be fair, at the end was a solid guy. He came in and, he wasn't picking up big points, but that was a much more improvement from where the rest of the second car had been doing. So
I don't think they'll have Galkut next season, though. I've seen him in FC. I think he's going to be
somebody solid, though, is more what I was looking at there, rather than spectacular, maybe. And expensive.
It will be interesting. I mean, I'm holding judgment at the moment, but I do see all of your points. It does make a lot of sense. Kacper, at that point in the season, we gave them 5.5. What do you reckon? Has it dropped?
I'm really, really considering dropping the ball on them. It's been hard. But because I honestly think that with what they've shown, they haven't deserved anything more than a 2, maybe even a 1.
Oh, that is a drop. I understand, though. I totally understand.
I think it's fair because they have shown absolutely nothing outside of one driver who has gotten banned halfway through the season. And I just don't feel that is up to the spec for Super League. That is a 1.5 from me.
A 1.5. Gosh, Mike,
wow.
Can you say anything else?
Well, the worry if you go that low is I've got teams I'd score below Mad Cape, so we're going to get really low.
Right, okay. So, well, no, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. What would you say?
I have a couple of zeros coming.
To be honest, though, they're a brand new team. They finished 7th. Granted, you can say it was on the back of one driver, but like most teams, football in my first season, we finished 6th. That was, they've not done much. They've done pretty much the same as we did in our first year.
Yes, but you didn't drop the ball on the second.
And you didn't get a driver ban, did you? Let's be fair.
No, but that's not necessarily the team's issue.
Okay.
This is you desperately trying to get out of that
Dig that hole.
You're digging it out the other side.
Bearing in mind, Mad Cape do have a nice Valiant engine. There's I can't. You can't score them that low. They haven't. There's teams who have done much worse than that, and I think they're at a 4.
A 4. Okay, Ben, what do you think?
I'll sit somewhere in the middle with a 3. Then I think the problem is they set themselves up agreeably with only one person, but they set themselves up so well at the start of the season for Lee Morris to go for, a top 3 push, to then just collapse to a point where they're scraping for the final points with Michael Galka, who, let's be fair, put in a really great performance. 4-point scores on the trot. He was consistent. The problem was it was always right at the bottom end of the points, which for a team that were at the front, that's not good enough. So 3 for me.
It's difficult because if you look at the script of their season, it reads like something out of the Andrea Moda days. And that's that's a really poor thing to say about a new team coming into a sim racing championship. Because, you can say, well, they did okay for a new team, but when they came in that strong at the start of the year, with that good a driver in Lee Morris, with that good a setup, it's appalling that they could just let that slip so quickly. and not find something to come back with.
And especially that one of the key factors in my scoring is that they have missed out on a race.
Yeah.
They have actually not put drivers on every race. And
More than once as well.
Which
So,
to me is appalling.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a 3 because they were strong at one point and then they just it's like they gave up. It's like, well, we have to put someone on the grid. Joe, what are you doing this evening? Nothing. Oh, go on then, get on the grid. And it just didn't seem like a professional team by the end of it. So I have to say 3. So hang on, we're going to have to do the mean average here. 4, 3, 3, and 1.5. You're looking at 11.5 divided by 3. You're looking at 2.3 there. You're looking at about 2.3.
Savage.
That's appalling, really, isn't it? It's about where we are. Right, Kernow. They were 7th mid-season. They did drop a position. It was quite a quiet year for them. They obviously move away from the sport now. They leave GPVWC Superleague at the end of the year. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, percentage-wise, the best car. You have to argue that in terms of how they managed to put it together for the first race of the season. It was an amazing car. And in the hands of Bart de Vos, they got it to 4th place in Monaco. A very, very good performance. However, we say that, Kacper, but it was not always a great effort considering what they had to start with.
Yeah, it's not a great... To be fair, I think Kernow just kind of, again, faded away. And it's just somehow... They have started kind of... I don't know, they weren't even always there. It's not a team that you would be really looking at a lot. It's somehow they have just dropped it. Last season, we would have seen him do a couple races where you would actually see Kernow being up there. And in here, we have seen a couple bits and bobs of them being in the top 10, running there in the beginning of the season. But afterwards, it just, they weren't anywhere, really.
Mm. It's a shame because in terms of the talent of the drivers, you can't say they put rubbish drivers in the car because they were very talented racers that they had in the car for the majority of the season. It's disappointing, Mike, as well, because you look at in terms of what they had and what they could have used with it, and they just kind of fell short more often than not.
Yeah, it was a definite what could have been, I think, is the thing here. They did build a great car. They had a great engine in the back. Cough, Valiant.
Bias.
Yeah, well, most of the grid does, to be fair.
That's true.
But just a Panic impressed, De Boss impressed. None of the guys that sort of came in after that particularly stood out, even though they had good talents from other series, maybe. But didn't particularly stand out. It surprised me really. They didn't score more points than they did. To actually sit there sitting in 8th, you'd think really, like, considering. And this is where I come to the point. Well, Madcape outscored them, and used the same amount of drivers, using the same engine. They built a better car. What do you want me to say?
That's your lawyer on the phone. Trying to stop saying awful things about other teams. Anyway, we should talk about Kernow.
That was Zach Speed ringing in the middle.
Oh, that was Zach Speed. Really? That's 10 out of 10. You can't say that about Kernow. 6 was the mid-season score. Ben, what do you reckon for these guys?
It's a tough one.
How do they bow out?
Part of me wants to be nicer because obviously they're leaving. But then I get the sense they never really recovered after when they lost their engine tender at the end of 2014 and pretty much almost went bankrupt. They've never really been the same Kernow. So, a 6 I think would be fair enough.
6 again, yeah. It was a little bit Sauberish, wasn't it? You can use that as a metaphor because it's quite comparative. Kacper, out of 10.
Maybe just a little lower, maybe a 5.5.
5.5. Mike, what do you reckon?
I'm going to go with a 5.
A 5. That wasn't Zach Speed telling you to say that, was it? No.
No.
Just say 5.
That'd be a little what we scored a donuts at. Yeah.
That would be what we scored a donuts at, a 5. I'm going to go, let's leave them on a high, a 6. So I think halfway is 5.5. Let's leave it at that. That'll do fine. Street Fighter. Now, the tide is turning for Street Fighter Racing System. They started the season in 8th. They finished it in 9th. We gave them 5 out of 10. It's been a weird season for them. Fair play for bringing in Maciej Mlejnek at the start of the season for the first few races. He turned out to be the super sub. It was amazing. David Francic, he had some reasonable point scoring performances through the season. Ben Horrell started a little bit lackluster, but then suddenly, boom, found his form, and it was amazing to watch him. So I genuinely think there's a little bit of a roller coaster coming with Street Fighter, and I think, Ben, we're about to see something really quite exceptional from these guys on the horizon.
I do hope so, because at times this season they showed some really good, positive pace. I think Horrell had a really bad patch through the first half of the season, and then we started getting to the second, and again it was a bit like, well, he hasn't changed. It's still retirements every race, and then suddenly turned up with P5, P6 kind of pace, and then was very unlucky the last two races when it was more him being taken out by others, because he was showing again some great pace again, P5, P6 area. So obviously we know that lineup next year will be Ben Horrell combined with Florian Gaia from Norton, which is huge. So
Yeah.
I think Street Fighter should at least be aiming for between top 5 to 7 area for next season in terms of teams' results. I think this could be a really good push from them.
Now, something from me just quickly. Would that maybe help Horrell out even more with because we know that Gaia is very fast, and we know what he has shown in Norton. Maybe he knows a few tricks, tips and tricks that he can give Horrell on setup as well, which could possibly even help Horrell a little bit more. And we're going to get a proper comparison now as to how Horrell is doing, because again, he has done very well in the second half of the season, or the very final bit of the second half of the season, after we have completely pummeled him in the SL show for ages. And we have honestly thought, I have personally thought that he should have been dropped a long time ago, and I was completely wrong by the end of it. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we've got Red Bull backing for Street Fighter Racing Systems. We've got Ben Horrell and Florian Gaia in the team. Expect them to be challenging for wins in 2018. What's our final score for them in 2017? Mike, out of 10, what do you think?
Oh, I'd give them a 5 again. I think actually
A 5 again?
They didn't have to swap and change drivers. They built a decent car. This is their first season as well. And to be fair, to be able to attract somebody like Gaia and Red Bull for next year, they obviously did something right.
Simple, liking that. Over to Ben. What do you think?
I agree with Mike, actually. 5 sounds pretty good. It was an average season that's had a little bit of an upwards trend towards the end. But what's set up for next season looks really, really good.
Kacper?
I can't disagree.
Yep, 5 for me as well. Not bad, Street Fighter. Looking forward to seeing that livery when you post it on the internet. Oh man, that's going to be beautiful. Right, Storm Racing. Now, this was an interesting one. They have confirmed new drivers for next year. It was a difficult season for them because in 2016 they were in the top 4, 10th position at the end of it all in 2017, and that was where they were mid-season as well. So they didn't exactly color themselves in glory over the course of the year. Driver consistency being their biggest problem. Some of the races, they didn't even put drivers on the grid. Mike, as you know, that is a no-no. And to be fair, it's disappointing from a team that was in the top 4 previous year.
It is to drop that far down, but I think when you lose somebody like Kacper, who managing the team as well, and as we said in the mid-season show, it's very difficult to then change that up. But actually, they used that mid-season point and to find themselves 2 drivers, Olsen and DeWalt, which actually did pretty well towards the end of the season for them. They actually picked up some points consistently, was solid enough. Yes, there was a missing race from one car, which is disappointing, of course. But I saw glimmers towards the end of the year that it would potentially could be a better season for them. And the signings they've done for next year look pretty decent as well. Solid lineup based on what's going on. Should keep them on the grid, hopefully, you'd think.
Yep, it's a good point, Kacper, because they've got an all-Dutch lineup for next year. Liam de Waal and Menno Klont should be a really interesting strategy for next year.
No, I agree. De Waal, again, he has driven this season for Storm as well at the end, if that's correct.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, and Menno Klont is an odd one. I've seen him do a bit better this season. I can't remember where I've seen him.
Formula Challenge.
Challenge, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that it could be interesting to see him actually do a proper season finally in Super League, and we'll see how that goes. I know he did some driver tests. He definitely did some testing, at least in 2016, for another team. So I think it was the Woods even.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting for a lineup and Storm. Yeah, let's see how that goes.
Yep, I won't hear a word said against Menoclont. He's a lovely, lovely.
Lovely chap.
Thank you for helping Team Downforce in our first full season. Thank you for that. Anyway, so let's talk about the score out of 10. It was 2.5 at the midway point because obviously that slump from 4th position. Kacper, what do you think?
I think that's fair still. 2.5, 3 points.
Okay.
2.5 for me, yeah.
2.5. Mike?
I'd give them a 3. I think the best second half of the season pulled it out of the bag a little bit for them. That's what I want to see from the team.
Okay, 3. Ben, what do you think?
I'd lean towards a 3. I think they had a better end to the season when they finally got some consistency down, and I think next season's going to be a case of solid lineup, trying to get points really.
Okay, well, yesterday was the 12th day of Christmas, so I'm still feeling a little bit. Go on, give him a 3. Give him a 3. Let's push it up to 3, and then we're all unanimous-ish. Then we've got Woods Racing. Well, where do we start? Basically, they used the garage for storage. I mean, probably the big yellow storage would have been cheaper, but very useful. It's a real shame because it's kind of like seeing Tyrrell disappear. They were a very strong and historic team in the GPVWC Superleague. They went the wrong way on upgrades early on in the season, which was ultimately their major downfall. And by the end of the season, they were gone. It was a little bit more painful to watch than perhaps MasterCard Lola's demise would have been because they weren't a new team and it didn't last one race. It lasted a few before they plug. Can we say anything other than 0 for guys?
Can we go into negatives?
We go into negatives. No, we can't go into negatives.
No.
They showed up at the start of the year.
No,
Give
it is a 0. It is a 0. They have just. It's unlucky. It's just unlucky that they have actually folded, but they just couldn't find the drivers, and it was just the management just couldn't deal with it anymore. I think is the case, and it's understandable to a degree after being in it for so long, but it's just sad to see it go this way.
Yeah. Ben, any different from a 0?
No. Even though I know the reasons why, I think you have to say a 0 because at the end of the day they left. But I know it was a very hard decision for them. I know it ended up basically being a case of it wasn't fun anymore, and when it's not fun, then you don't carry on. So
yeah, there's no point after that, is there? Mike, 0.
Of course, you can't. Yeah, sorry, there's no defending.
Sorry, Woods, big fat 0, but we loved you. We loved you while they were there. Right, Green Stripes. Now, I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says in this podcast. It is my favourite team on the grid. I love them. I love them. I was a massive Minardi fan. I was a huge Minardi fan. Every year, you knew that even though they were going to be the worst cars on the grid and they were going to finish last every time pretty much, they always had one of the best looking cars on the grid. And I have to say, I agree with that sentiment with Green Stripes as well. I liked their car. I think it looked awesome. They had no consistency at all, or luck actually, because when things did start looking like they were going to go for them, it kind of tumbled away in races. Strategy wasn't great. They're going to go down to the Super Cup next year. I want to see them win that and get back on the grid in 2019. I do. They were very Minardi-ish. I think they were the most Minardi of the Minardi tribute bands that you can see in Super League and Super Cup and Formula Challenge, Downforce Racing being one of them. So yes, Mike, it was wonderful overtaking Green Stripes racing cars through the year. I'm sure you got to overtake quite a few of them.
Most of them backwards or off the track, yeah.
Oh, come on.
No, down or in the pit 10 times or whatever it might be. I'm sorry. The credit to them, they got to the end of the season.
Yeah.
With 2 cars. I give them that. That's better than Woods. But to be underscored by a team that only did a third of the season is horrendous. Sorry.
I love them for that, though. I kind of love them for that. They get the wooden spoon for trying award.
Now, did somebody accidentally put like a bomb inside of the engine compartment of those cars that was set to blow up whenever they did well as well?
Well, it doesn't spring well that they changed from Valiant last year, did it?
Yeah.
Change engine supplier and come last and get to motor.
Well, that's an ironic point. It's an ironic point you make there, Kacper, because they did do the Luca Badoa, didn't they? Nürburgring 99, when he was running about 4th. Oh, we're going to get loads of points for Minardi. Boom, engine goes. Oh, no. It was very similar to that for Green Stripes a lot of the time. They had a good opportunity to bring home some major points and then something would happen. Or a lapse in concentration, and that would be it, spinning round. It's such a shame. It was painful, but enjoyable to watch Green Stripes in 2017. I loved it.
Well, we have Ben who driven for them as well.
Hey.
Yeah, come on, Ben. You had an amazing time.
Well, it's all right. It's a shame to see him step down.
What you're supposed to say there is, yes, I did. No, fair enough. I mean,
Ben had the second best finishing rate of all their drivers.
That is a scary prospect.
That is very scary.
That's a horrible statistic to point out.
Hey.
Oh, you'll take it, though. Fair enough. You will take it. Anyway, they had 5 different drivers through the course of the year, all but one of them being English. So I quite like that about them. You know, they backed us, and we were just like the cricketers. We were rubbish, wonderfully rubbish. Anyway, yes, 2 out of 10 is what we gave them at the halfway point of the season. Ben, for your contribution alone, surely that stands.
For my contribution, wow, that's very generous. Thank you. For the whole team, I was looking at negatives, but
does that mean
former driver of the team, Adrian Suttill? Anyway.
Does that mean because you've got Willis in the team, you've dealt with that, so you get some points?
That's at least a 3, I feel. Come on.
Oh man.
Just wait till you see Formula Challenge next year.
So you're going to negatives, or are you just being nice?
So genuinely based on their middle to end of season, given how good the car was, it's to be outscored by Woods is not good. And if we're giving Woods a 0, then we have to give Green Stripe something less than 0.
Oh, okay, -1 from you then.
Yeah.
Kacper, what do you think?
I mean, okay. So
you're going to give them a negative as well, aren't you?
Seriously, Green Stripes, as much as we may love it, you wouldn't ever give a minority a 5 out of 10. No.
Well, I would, but then I'm clinically insane. I'm clinically insane, so that's different.
No, I think, as sad as that is, I have to agree with Ben. They just showed something incredible in terms of being outscored by a team that was not doing well and that finished after a third of the season. This is ridiculous. Okay. Of course it isn't.
Mike, what do you reckon?
No, look, I'm going to disagree.
What?
Yes.
What?
No, they got to the end of the season. You can't have a negative score. They
did worse than Woods.
Huh? No, they didn't. From a spectacle point of view, they turned up and they were better for the league and the championship than Woods, because Woods.
I get the beat machine out now.
That is the first time we've gone to that.
When you guys were so damning on other teams for missing races earlier on, and scoring them down for that. Green Stripes turned up. They built a good car as a management team. They actually built a decent car. One point I'm giving them.
How many times in the year? How many times in the year did they miss an entry? Because you have to put 2 cars on the grid. Did they ever not put 2 cars on the grid?
So there's
3 events they didn't put 2 cars on.
3 events out of 18.
They had a car to every event.
And then you look at Mad Cape, and then you look at Woods.
So what I'm hearing is we're going to have to redo all the scoring.
Yes.
No, I'm going to give them 1. So here's what's going to happen here.
We're going to get 0.
No, wait. Yeah, because you guys both gave -1, Ben and Kacper. We gave them 1. You took up the average. It's a 0. They're the same as Woods.
Perfect. We'll agree to disagree.
We'll agree to disagree, and that'll be it. Oh, bless them. Good luck in Super Cup, Green Stripes. I'm your biggest fan. Anyway, we shall continue by looking across the best and worst of the entire season. We did this every show. Mike, what was your best thing other than your own team? Come on. Be objective.
Did anyone else do something this year? Sorry, what?
Be objective. Be objective, man. It's coming out your wages.
Well, man, to be honest, if you just look, how can I not include my guys? Because
we know you go for them.
Of course I would, because that's natural.
Actually, okay, I tell you what, the
look
safest way.
If it wasn't my problem, if you hadn't had my issue in it, they'd have scored a record number of points.
All right, then.
They've won so many races, it's ridiculous.
The safest way to do this then is I'm going to put a rule. We're going to restart that boy, but we're not going to include Rudy Van Buren because we know he was the best. You can't argue with that. He was the world's fastest gamer. He was the dominant champion in Super League. He's off the table.
Are you suggesting we pick the second best?
Yeah, okay. Second best then. All right. So who was your second best driver of 2017? I'm going to give Mike's answer for him because he's already.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Risto Cabot.
The fact it goes without saying proves that it's probably the case. Doesn't it, though?
Liking it.
Championship, he won a race the same as anyone else did.
Right.
He's come second multiple times.
Okay.
Brilliant guy. Sorry.
Loving the argument. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You don't need my argument. Just look at the table.
Okay. Kacper Ben, second best. Second best driver.
It's a bit of a tough one, to be honest, between the two drivers. It would be between either Risto because he did really well, like that's undeniable. Although he did have blips of just being quite a bit slower than his car would allow him to, where he would have been slower than the Nordstrom. But in overall, he has done really quite well for himself. But I also cannot deny that the Jarl Tyne came in and did extremely well for somebody who to just come in and be fighting for the wins in the second half of the season. So honestly, I am actually really tempted to give the second place to Jarl Tyne and then third to Risto.
Ooh, I like it. I like that. Interesting answer. Ben, what do you reckon?
I'm going to go for a very left field choice here and go for Thomas Hintz, because he is the only driver I can see here, apart from Massage Milnek, who scored on every race they did.
That's a very good point.
Thomas Hintz, we've lauded him with praise for the entire season because he was so consistent. He was by far the best on his tyres out of anybody on the grid.
Yep.
And if he stays on at Red Arch next year, they build a good car. I think he could do really well.
He also got the award from GPVWC for the most improved driver of 2017 in Superleague. So, yes, that's a shout out to Thomas Hintz even more. So I can't deny that.
I can think of other drivers who did score on every occasion, though. Because there were a couple of others who did manage to score points on every time they raced. Yep. Alex Siebel was one of them. And Jeff Fournier was the other one. But then
scale that up to the number of times Hintz raced.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Hintz did do the best over all of it. Yeah, I'm seeing your point. I want to say David Fidek. Because... Really? Yeah, I do. Because if you look at how hard he's worked in that particular car, there have been difficulties through the course of the season. Worked incredibly hard. He's a very, very likable bloke, David Fidek. He works incredibly hard. He's not always been able to put himself in the right frame of mind for things because of various things. And to be fair, he visited the podium 9 times. He got a win. One of the most impressive wins of the season, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Did a grand job pulling that team through. While there were some difficulties with Flo, they did eventually fall out. They have gone their separate ways. David, you can say, is kind of the core of the Nordsjön team. I kind of want to say that most of what happened with Nordsjön in 2017 is down to him. Statistically, maybe not so, because Flo Gaia won one more race than him, but the amount of times that Fidek was able to pull back a back of the grid penalty to get himself back into the top 10, to get himself onto the podium 9 times, only Rudy Van Buren and Risto Capit visited the podium more than him in 2017. And you could argue that the reason they did that was because they had the best car. So I'd like to think that David Fidek has a place as being the number 2 of the season. I'm going to argue that. We cannot agree on this one. We clearly cannot agree with this one. Because
we'll have to go off the standings, won't we?
4 completely different... we have to go off the standings.
There's the bias there.
Says the smug man wearing red in the corner. Anyway.
It's white now.
It is white now. Let's talk about the worst. Because this one could be an easier decision. There were 59 drivers, to choose from. Who was the worst driver of 2017? Ben Willis. No, I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you that question. I'm not going to say it was you. I'm going to ask you who you thought it was. None of this, if I'm going by my own it's rubbish. No, none of that. You need
I was going to pick myself. God.
Good. I'm glad of that.
I mean, statistically, looking at the standings, you have to look at Mitchell de Jong, who did 3 races and 3 DNFs with that 100% DNF rate for Madcape, I believe that was. That's a tough one, really. I mean, do you go for Lee Morris for his massive demise?
It's a
don't know.
difficult one, isn't it? I suppose.
Well, there's a few out there, I think. It depends if you can just go off a DNF rate, but like you say, you can go, well, what was where they should have finished against where they actually did and things like that. I mean, to me, I'd look at Roland. I think that was a poor
Ooh,
8
Nick
races
Rowland,
he
yeah.
did. I think he only scored a couple of points here and there.
Who was that? Sorry.
Nick
Oh,
Rowland.
Nick Rowland.
He
Yeah.
drove the Mad Cape. You know, at the same time, Morris was scoring
6
podiums.
DNFs
He's
out of
there.
8.
Yeah. And we know he's got the skill to be much, much higher up than that.
And I'd counter an argument in there for Bent Schuberneck because 8 DNFs out of 17.
Yeah,
It's
just
a-
purely statistically speaking, you could also look at Garrett de Vries. Just
Yeah,
12
you could look at
starts
Garrett de
and,
Vries.
and 4 points total. Only 3-point finishes.
Can I be
It's-
controversial at this point?
Yes,
I'm going to say Lucas Euler.
that's a fair say.
Yeah. Well,
I'm-
yeah.
I'm going to say Lucas Euler because when you consider he was before compared to how he was this year, that was for me the biggest disappointment of them all. It's a tough one, but
Yeah.
I kind of want to say Lucas Euler. If not Lucas Euler, then I kind of want to say Daniel Sharanku, who was
Yeah, that
right
was
in there at
great,
Wouters, right in there at Wouters at the start of the year, tumbled away. He did 7 races, 5 of them with DNFs.
And
And
you said that
that's-
the worst are going to be easier.
I know.
But it's really
I
not.
know. But yeah, Lucas Euler, I can't really think of anybody who's more deserving of that acclaim, really. It's a difficult one. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's going to be people out there. Are you kidding? And go for something completely different. You're right. That's absolutely fine. Right. Best and worst teams. We're going to exclude Vodbull because we know they were. The stats speak for themselves.
So we're back to second best team then.
We're back to second best team. Casper, who's your number 2 team?
Well. Second best team. To be honest, I think just for being consistently up there, Nordstrom, it's the easy choice. But I think it's fair to say that they have been the second. They have been second there for the entirety, especially the second half of the season. They've had a bit of a shoddy first half of the season, nearly, where they didn't understand the tires maybe or something. It was very akin to the season prior, again, where it took them a long time to get used to it. But I think in the end, Nordstrom does deserve being.
So you're saying it's easy for a reason.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I understand that. Ben Willis, what do you think?
I'd agree with Casper. Second best being Nordson. Whether they will be second next year, I doubt that. I think Wouters could usurp them a bit.
Fair enough. Mike.
No, I'd have to agree with Nordstrom
Mike.
as well. They definitely,
Mike.
yeah, Nordstrom definitely had 2 drivers all year. They both did very well. You know, they're there for a reason. They built a good car as always. So yeah, you can't put them anywhere else but second.
Fair enough. Very gracious of you. Second. Worst team. Now, do we go for Woods? Do we go for Green Stripes? Or do we go for Mad Cape? It's a tricky one, but I think it has to be between those 3. It has to be between those 3, doesn't it?
Yeah, I go Green Stripes.
Green
I
Stripes
think,
still?
given
Okay.
the car they had.
Okay. Mike?
Woods,
Woods, from your point of view.
yeah, didn't finish the season.
Casper?
Mad Cape for how far they have fallen from how far help they have been. at
Oh,
the start.
great.
Yeah.
See, you've all picked one each, so now my vote is going to be the
Or
controversial
you can pick a fourth and make it
could.
completely split.
No, I can't sensibly pick a 4, let's be honest.
Do it.
I think it has to be Woods, doesn't it? They didn't finish the season. They
So-
didn't finish the season. They didn't try very hard at all.
Well,
picking up.
I'd argue they tried very hard, and again, knowing the reasons why they left,
Oh, well, actually,
tried-
hang
they
on.
tried
the start of their season was very good.
They tried
Actually-
hard for a very short period of time.
If
Green
I think
Stripes
about
tried hard all season.
If I think about it, they did 7 races, and they had.
That's all you
7
need to say. They did
they
7
had-
races.
they
That's
had-
it.
they
The
had
reason why
7
they're last.
Yeah, but they've outscored Green Stripes by
They have-
double.
They had 7 points finishes out of their 7 races they entered, with a
Yes.
potential 14. So I love them, but I want them to win something. Green Stripes. There you go. I've changed my mind. Green Stripes.
Whoa!
I have changed my mind because they only scored 10 points all year.
Is this winning or losing?
They are the best losers. They are the best losers. That's what we say. There we go. Right. So on we move. Obviously, SimNews.TV, some great cool stuff happening, including with Assetto Corsa. Ben, fill us in. This is incredibly exciting stuff.
Which I'm then going to pass straight to Mike to fill us
Oh,
in.
okay. Mike, on you go.
All right, yeah. Well, racing action doesn't quite start here at GPVWC quite yet, so you can get yourself over to Sim Racing Malta. We've got live commentary coming up on all our pages and YouTube with their Porsche Championship with big race prizes and everything going on there. So that's quite exciting to watch. That'll keep you entertained, no doubt, during the winter months before you kick into GPV again.
Yeah, should be very exciting. I've heard a lot from the sim racing people. Justin doing a great job running that show. The Scrutineer is back talking bids, pre-season, all sorts of gossip and rumours next week, I believe. That is going to happen next week.
Yeah, well, we're starting bidding live now. So, yeah.
Start today.
Very exciting stuff.
Talk about when it all comes out.
So the ones that we do know about in terms of the only ones that we can confirm at this point, Nordsian have David Fire, Alex Cooper. Red Archer, the boys from Greece, have Pedro Gomez as their lead driver. No second driver as yet. Storm have chosen Liam Duval and Menno Klont, and Red Bull Street Fighter have chosen Ben Horrell and Flo Gaia. Any rumours about ACR yet? Come on, Mike.
Lots of
That's what you're
rumours.
here for. That's what you're here for. We need to know something. Come on.
I can
give
hear
us
him
some
grabbing the
dirt.
shovel.
Give us some dirt. Come on. Spill the beans. Spill the beans.
Well, we did see Willis coming out of the factory, I'm sure, the other day.
Oh, yes, that's an amazing.
Is this the awkward time where I say I'm contracted elsewhere?
That's a shame. Turned us down.
Oh.
Maybe
Oh,
we
I
should look.
love
Maybe
it.
we should look at who we ran in the young drivers test. That could give indications. Who knows? You never know.
Okay,
So
interesting.
Joshua Anderson.
Excellent, Joshua Anderson for ACR Zach Speed. You heard it here first. We are back fully in February, of course, for pre-season testing. All shall be exciting up until that point. Do please keep in touch. GPVWC.com. Mark it in your bookmarks and get yourself testing and on the grid for Formula Challenge if you haven't done so. If you are a regular driver in Super League, get yourself a contract. Get yourself on the grid. It's going to be the best sim racing show in single-seaters in 2018. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SLShowSN and the hashtag SLShow if you want to send us a message. Subscribe below if you're listening as well via the YouTube stream. Thank you very much indeed to Ben Willis, to Kacper Ben, and to Mike Pittman. It's been an absolute ball.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we get to do it all over again in 2018. I have a feeling this year is going to turn the dial up to 11, to coin a phrase of Spinal Tap. Thank you for listening to the Superleague Show on SimNews.TV, and we will be back for more action as the season begins.